paid, because highly paid labor was well-clothed, well-educated, healthier labor. So the idea was to raise wages and the economy hand in hand, and it would be a feedback where there would be positive growth. And the essence of free market economics at that time, which is what the Republicans believed and many Democrats, was that a market was free of interest and rent charges. The idea of free market from Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, Henry George, and the American progressives was, how do you free market from income and prices that are not necessary? And what is unnecessary in prices? Well, you need to pay wages, you need to pay the cost of living, but you don't need to pay rent and interest. And the idea was that the government was initially to collect all of the higher income, the higher rental income of land, that was basically, land rent was created by public prosperity. It belonged to the public.
Basically. Now, this is a fairly radical departure even from British capitalism, where all this emerged.
Not really.
I mean, rents was not the rentiers were a big stratum of the capitalist class in England, were they not?
Yes, they were, but the ideal of what had put all of this idea politically in was a right-winger, Henry George. Henry George was the antithesis of socialism because he said you don't have to nationalize the land to take it over. All you need to do is to tax the land rent, and you can leave housing, commercial property in private hands. You can leave utilities in private hands. So whereas the European countries would take over electric power utilities as nationalized public enterprises. In America, we left the electric utilities, the gas utilities, most of the public infrastructure in private hands, but we taxed away the surplus and we regulated the prices so that the idea was to keep prices in line with cost value. Now, this was what classical economics is all about. You had not only the labor theory of value, which was of necessary cost, but you had the price theory of economic rent. Rent being the excess of price over and above the necessary cost of production. And so the income tax law said, how do we make the American economy more productive so we can become the most productive economy and outcompete foreign economies? And the answer was so that we can keep our prices in line with costs, and the costs will go up, our labor costs are going to go up, but our productivity is going to rise even more. So you had Democratic as well as Republican administrations doing wage productivity studies from the 1890s on that showed that highly paid American wage labor could undersell what was called pauper labor. So you had America get rich by following the exact opposite of what Paul Samuelson says, the exact opposite of what is taught in international trade theory today, the exact opposite of what Nobel Prizes are given for, that if you increase living standards, you make labor more productive. This is why Asia today is becoming more productive than the United States.
Okay, let's back up.
All of classical economics was about the labor theory of value and the price theory, the rent theory of pricing. The ideal of classical economics was to bring prices down to the actual cost of production by financing the government budget by essentially taxing economic rent. And the ideal from John Stuart Mill through Henry George, through Thorstein Veblen, and the entire progressive era in the United States was to base the tax system on economic rent, on income earned without any enterprise, without any cost of production, to get the excess of rental value over and above the actual cost of providing housing and office buildings, to tax monopoly rent, to tax the broadcasting spectrum, to tax mining, to tax everything, all the income that really was created as an excess charge, as a toll booth to what was provided by nature. So if the American tax system for the last, say, 20 years even 50 years, had been based on taxing property like it used to be, then property prices wouldn't have gone up. You would have had a low price. If you would have taxed the entire rental value of property, the value of land is distinct from the value of buildings, then you would have the government tax system keeping down the price of property to its actual value, and you wouldn't have had to tax labor through an income tax. You wouldn't have had to have sales tax. You wouldn't have had to have a Social Security and health care tax. The economic rent, that is income without a cost of production, absorbs about 35% of the American economy. And yet you no longer have the national income statistics making that clear. They conflate rent with earnings and profit. And so if you look in the national income and product accounts under the real estate sector and the FIRE sector, finance, insurance, and real estate, you have their rental income counted simply as earnings. And you have to look at you can disaggregate these earnings into profits on building and the rent from the land simply by going to the Federal Reserve's flow of funds accounts and making a distinction between the value of land and the value of buildings, and you find land represents over half of the actual value of property. So if the tax system, the income tax system, had fallen on this economic rent and the returns to the FIRE sector, finance, insurance, and real estate, then you wouldn't have to tax labor at all. You would have the lowest priced labor in the